Joined now by Keitumetse Sesana from the South African Institute of Taxation. Keitumetse, a very good afternoon to you. You heard what the minister had to say. Your take overall?
So thank you very much for having us. So my take is that this was a very positive budget. The minister did say that this is not an austerity measure budget, but rather a redistributive. And I must agree with him that I've seen these points coming through. Of course, there are significant strides that we need to take. And we appreciated the fact that we now recognize as government that instituting more taxes and taxing people more is not the way out of this spending tax debt trap that we're currently facing. Of course, the taxpayers are going to bear the brunt of this. We saw that the general fuel levy, something that was increased. The minister did make mention that this is something that was not increased in the past 3 years. If you look at the previous budget, it was about 4 billion rand of revenue that was foregone as a result of not increasing the general fuel levy. So those were kind of the low-hanging fruit that we had suspected that the government would go for in order to raise the revenue. But we're really also encouraged by the fact that the revenue authorities have now been given more muscle to go out and collect the taxes that are already outstanding. This has been a call from us as the South African Institute of Taxation for many years, saying that there is this tax gap. As opposed to introducing new taxes, we need to go out and collect the taxes that are due. The commissioner, they're mentioning that about 25 to 30 billion rand is an amount that they've estimated that they can collect per year. That, of course, as the minister also mentioned, is a drop in the ocean, but it is a good drop in the ocean because it shows that we're on the right track. And the revenue authorities have started on these types of measures in order to go out and collect outstanding debt, improve and modernize their AI in order to bring or bolster the fiscal pockets or the fiscal purse. And this is very positive that came out from the budget today.
Well, it's interesting you're saying it is not an austerity budget. Edward Kiswert are saying it actually is an austerity budget. It's teaching us to live without, within our means.
And that is very, very positive. And I do agree with the commissioner there, Mr. Edward Keitumetse, that to a certain extent it is austerity. The government is now realizing that spending has been on the upward trajectory and it is not sustainable. And therefore we need to look into our pockets and see what we can redistribute and reprioritize in order to, get on board with what we want to go as a fiscal framework. Looking at the project that the Treasury is undertaking, to look at the spending inefficiencies, and the amount of money is about 37.5 billion that they forecast that they can raise by, cutting the budget, looking at where they can, reprioritize and synergize and create greater efficiencies, shows that while it has been picked to be a redistributive budget and not austerity measures, but those measures have been put in place alongside redistributive measures to get South Africa on a proper fiscal framework that is sustainable for the country.
Of course, for SARS to bring in more money, they're going to need people. The commissioner talking about the 500 or so people that they are bringing into the system, who are no doubt also going to come at a cost, but to be able to collect more money, more debt owed to SARS.
Agreed. If you look at the medium-term expenditure framework, the 2024 one, the commissioner there had pegged that they need about 2,338 employees cumulatively over the next couple of years in order to bolster SARS's muscle to go out and collect. The initial 500 being those that will be brought in now, in order to, to go after and collect the debt and to bring on board the compliance strategic programs that the commissioner has previously announced at the revenue result as those that have been working to collect the money. So they will obviously come at a cost, yes, we do understand, but it's a cost that we have to bear as South Africans, because those employees, over and above that, being able to create employment, will also be able to help the commissioner and help the revenue authorities to collect the taxes that are due so that there are no more additional taxes that are thrust upon South Africans in the medium to long term.
Do you think it has perhaps taken longer than was necessary to actually hear SARS's cry for more resources so that it can collect more of what is actually due to it than perhaps introducing new taxes, including VAT?
Yes, that's true. It has taken us a bit longer to hear the cries, but we appreciate the Commissioner under his stewardship, and I must commend him for this, that he has made these cries persistent and he's made them consistent for a very long time until we're able to wake up and realize that what he is saying is indeed the truth. I do believe that the South African Revenue Service is actually one of the biggest winners from this Budget 3.0 because the cries have been heard. Yes, it did take a bit of time, but we eventually got there. What we should focus on is, of course, the positive, that now that the messaging has come through, we've analyzed the numbers, and the Commissioner has now been given the money or the muscle to go forward and collect those outstanding taxes. This is a positive move. Of course, for taxpayers, those that are non-compliant, it is not good news, but the SARS regularly works together with institutions such as ourselves, the South African Institute of Taxation, to get tax practitioners and taxpayers to be compliant, so that the right amount of tax is collected from you and put into the fiscal pocket that will help to redistribute the wealth across the country to all that live in it to make it sustainable.
Of course, I mean, 4 billion is what they have been given in order to increase their capacity to collect those taxes. Just one last one. Anything you think the minister may have, or from your vantage point, the minister may have missed? From a taxation point of view, especially.
Sorry, please repeat that.
From a taxation point of view.
From a taxation point of view, one that we would have liked to see is, of course, we know that the tax thresholds have been frozen for quite some time. And that places South Africans under a lot of undue strain, because that means that the income that you earn is essentially eroded by the amount of tax that you pay. And this is something that we would have liked to have seen come through in the budget this year, as it did come through in Budget 1.0, when the minister and his team had acknowledged that the effects of inflation are eroding taxpayers' spending power. And therefore, they had adjusted the tax tables partially and fully for inflation. However, as a result of having to drop the value-added tax increase, they reneged or went back on that decision. So that is one that we would have liked to see. Just the acknowledgement that the inflation is eroding purchasing power for taxpayers, and to go back to the original decision on the 12th of Feb to have those tax tables fully or partially adjusted. Of course, that didn't come through because that would have meant more foregone revenue. And we know that as a result of the non-adjustment, they've been able to raise about 19.5 billion, which is, of course, money that the fiscus now needs because the VAT is not increasing. So we look forward to, these measures of redistributing and synergizing spending actually yielding results, so that in the long term, measures such as adjusting the tax tables can then be put back onto the table to really help taxpayers out.
Keitumetse, Sesana, thank you very much for your time and insights. Really appreciate it, from the South African Institute of Taxation.